Hello and welcome to Outdoor Asylum with Brad Allen. We are here as always in the Cache River Studios at the Elite Duck Call Shop. Here with my producer, Jake Seipert. Jake, you have to yell. We've taken Jake's microphone away. Yeah, there he goes. Jake, we took his microphone away this morning because he's having a bad week. It's been a bad week all the way around. The starter on his truck wouldn't work this morning. I'm not even sure how he got here, if he hitchhiked. I don't know, but yeah, we were a little scared of what Jake might say, so we took his microphone away from him today. Got a really excited about this episode today because I think it's going to be a lot of you that are going to be very interested in this, especially our hunters here in Arkansas. I've got two special guests with me. I've got Tim Willis, who is the manager of the conservation programs with Ducks Unlimited, and I also have Luke Naylor, who is the head waterfowl program coordinator for the Arkansas Game and Fish. He's the head man in charge there. So, guys, really appreciate both of you coming and joining us today. We've got a real exciting project here in Arkansas that you're going to talk about, like I said, that's going to really affect our WMAs. But before we get into that, I want to know who I'm talking to here. You guys, I know Luke's a little bit of a shady guy. I've heard a lot of stuff about him. So, Tim, I want to see about you. So tell me about where'd you grow up, man?
Well, I grew up a little town, actually, Beech Grove, Arkansas. It's a little country town just outside of Paragould. Most people probably familiar with Paragould more than Beech Grove, but my dad was a rice farmer, so I grew up on the rice farm, and ducks and rice were sort of part of my childhood and getting outside, and grew up and decided I want to work with wetlands and ducks, and went to school at Arkansas State. Got my bachelor's and master's degrees there, and actually out of college, my first job was with Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, assistant manager at Dave Donaldson up at Brookins, and worked there for a year or so, and then got on with Ducks Unlimited, and I've been there right at 20 years now. So
yeah, being with the WMAs, you're not a stranger to that, being around the Brookings area and all of that. Now, you graduated ASU. Were you a Red Wolf or an Indian?
Well, I was an Indian when I graduated. So
okay, when did they start? They changed the mascot. What, like late?
Yeah,
somewhere right before 2010, somewhere maybe a little bit earlier.
Yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah, I got you. Luke, how about you? Where you hail from?
South Central Kansas. So
okay.
I grew up in a little town just north of Wichita. So a lot of my family now is in Wichita, but a little old town of Valley Center that was pretty small when I was a kid, but it's grown a fair bit now. So I grew up there. Knew at a pretty young age I wanted to be a wildlife biologist, and kind of one of those strange kids who had to dialed in early in life, and then it kind of narrowed to waterfowl as that was my biggest passion as far as outdoor activities. I enjoyed all kinds of hunting, but really honed in on waterfowl, and went to Kansas State University. Got my degree in wildlife and fisheries there.
Okay.
And then went on to graduate school actually out in the other primary rice growing region of the country in the Central Valley of California. So went out there doesn't get a lot of play around here, but that's you got to be careful what you say. But the rice and duck hunting culture in the Central Valley of California, I won't compare it to anywhere else, but just say it is extremely strong.
Yeah.
And I got to learn a lot out there for about 6 years, finishing my master's degree and some other different jobs with private lands primarily out there.
Yeah, as Arkansans, we tend to think of ourselves. We think of ourselves as being the only people that really know anything about duck hunting for the most part. But that California area, it's really surprising how much waterfowl, how much hunting there is out there. And we tend to think of Los Angeles and Hollywood when we think California, but there is some awesome waterfowl opportunities out there, and a lot of ducks harvested along that Pacific Flyway.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, hunts out there with some good friends and coworkers over the years, where you can, of course, they've got a 7 mallard daily bag limit, hunt for about 100 days a year. They're already going right now, and some memorable hunts out there of shooting 7 greenheads in a day, and just it's totally different than here. Every place has its own little character to it, but there is a deep waterfowling culture out there.
Yeah.
It's just a little different than here. But a lot more Bay Area Italians and those sorts of folks out there duck hunting, and some Hollywood influence too. If you get farther enough south in the Central Valley, there's a lot of old stories about Hollywood actors coming up over to hunt in the Tulare Basin.
There's a picture just outside this door right here of Clark Gable holding some ducks there that he had taken. I've got a few pictures of different Hollywood celebrities, most of them old school. That, out there
way
duck
back
hunting.
when.
So yeah, that's pretty cool. 7 mallards a day. When we're leaving, I'm ready to go.
You can go right now.
Okay.
Head out. Just we'll make a couple phone calls and get you lined out with somebody. It's,
okay.
I would, in all seriousness, though, it's something to put. It's not on a lot of people's bucket list, but it is a really unique experience. And what's kind of cool about it is that if you think about that whole landscape out there, and we're really fortunate in Arkansas to have some quality waterfowl habitat from far north, far south, east and west. Everybody talks about the Delta, but we've got West Arkansas, Southwest Arkansas have great duck country too. Mm-hmm. All of it's within about a 50-mile by 200-mile long stretch in California. Mm-hmm. Like it's all concentrated in this one valley, almost exclusively. There's a few exceptions, but that key area is just so concentrated, and the numbers of waterfowl that winter in those places is astounding. I mean, it'll blow your mind sometimes to see these big concentrations of waterfowl out there.
Yeah, I'm sold. Let's book a trip. Jake, if you will, get Nancy Pelosi on the phone. Tell her we want to come out there. We want to do a little hunting. Get that set up for us.
With Nancy?
Yeah. Okay. Well, no, we'll just tell her we're coming. Okay. She'll make the arrangements. Anyway, no, we're not going to get political today. Everybody take a deep breath. I won't do that to you. But, no, to start with, okay, we're going to talk about what we're doing here with our WMAs, especially talking about with the water management and things like that. So, Luke, if you will, kind of set us up for those that may not know what we're going through here in Arkansas regarding the timber, our flooded timber, and managing the water, kind of the problems that we've had here recently and what we're doing about it.
Yeah, so this goes back many, many years. You know, most of Arkansas is known far and wide, of course, including in California, by the way, for green timber duck hunting. And, that goes back, it's pushing 100 years now, really, when the idea of a green tree reservoir came on the scene, which was kind of an accident when rice started getting grown across the Grand Prairie originally. And folks kind of just ring-levied a scope of trees to have water to irrigate rice, right? And then in the winter, like, wow, okay, the ducks love this place. Mm-hmm. And they knew when natural bottom and hardwood forests flooded, in the years they did flood, there'd be a lot of ducks, and people would have an opportunity to shoot those ducks, hunt those ducks. So it kind of all came together that, okay, hey, we can emulate this every year, right? We don't have to wait for the river to rise. We can keep water in these forests. And when that started, through the 30s, 40s, 50s, they think this farmer by the name of Tyndall, is a legend goes, he was the first guy to do this really in the 1930s. And, it kind of grew and really lots of folks, private and public agencies, thought they were doing something that was really, that was necessary to sustain waterfowl hunting and waterfowl populations because forests were being cleared right across the Delta. A lot of that happened the 40s and 50s,
yeah.
A lot of clearing, right? And they thought, okay, this is necessary to maintain this habitat for ducks. And so they did. And well, now fast forward 50 or 60 years, 70 or 80 years in some cases. And what you've got is a whole bunch of places that were designed to capture every last bit of water possible, stop it all from moving, and provide hunting opportunity on an annual basis with regularity.
Right.
That doesn't work for a natural bottom and hardwood forest in the long run.
Yeah.
So now where we sit is we've got all these forests that we go out and evaluate them, and man, there's some serious problems with forest health in these GTRs, and that's kind of where we sit. There's a major forest health problem. The forest composition is shifting. A lot of the red oak species that are not water tolerant or are less water tolerant are dying out of the forest. Mm-hmm. They're being replaced with these different water tolerant species that we think have less wildlife value and just aren't the species that were kind of naturally in that system. They were there, but just we're kind of increasing the prevalence of those species that that shouldn't be the dominant species. So what we're doing now is taking a step back and really kind of fundamentally overhauling how we manage those areas.
So we're losing I'm assuming a lot of the oak trees, like the red oaks, pin oak,
So nut all oak, willow oak, which most people call pin oak around here.
Yeah.
And then there's some higher, drier species, water oak, cherry bark, things like that. But most of it's nut all and willow oak on these GTRs.
So what are we seeing an increase in? The ones that favor more of the wet habitat?
Yep, overcup oak in the oak species, right, which is a water-tolerant oak that produces an acorn that's – most of those acorns cannot be ingested by a mallard. They're just too big.
Yeah.
And
deer love them, but not the mallards.
Right,
yeah.
And that's what most folks go out there and kick around in the woods in the winter and say, man, this place is covered up with duck food, right? Look at all these floating acorns, And it's either a rotten red oak acorn or it's an overcup oak acorn, right? It's not really duck food, and we can discuss and go back and forth on how much what resources ducks actually get out of those forests, and we do. They get acorns out of them. They also get invertebrates. They get cover, lots of different things. But yeah, overcup oak, and then other non-oak species. You get some different hickory species that are water tolerant. You get some different elm species that are water tolerant. In the worst case scenario, you have total die-offs, and it gets to more of a herbaceous, grassy forb type stuff or buckbrush type forest. Well, not really a forest at that point. So that's kind of a worst case scenario. But all of those things are just a shift to kind of semi-aquatic species, not these red oaks that can take maybe 1, 2, 3 months of dormant season flooding, but not this consistent every year for 50 years type of flooding.
Yeah. So we're damaging our timber. So now that we've discovered this, well, let me ask you this first: how was this discovered? Like, and I know you could talk forever about this. So
right.
just a general idea of, at what point, kind of who came together and we said, hey, we've got a problem here. We're going to have to do something about this. The water management's got to be changed. At what point and who was involved, what commissions and stuff were involved in actually coming to that decision and making the change?
A whole lot of folks inside and outside of Game and Fish, including like Tim, folks with Ducks Unlimited. So, you could probably go back 20, maybe 30 years probably, and some folks started to just notice a change in the forest. That's the thing about trees, right? They live for a long time. So sometimes that change is really slow. And it was probably 30 years ago, let's say the 80s, when people started to do a little bit of research on this and say, wow, there's some problems here. One of the best long-term studies of this was done at Felsenthal Refuge. They did a long-term study of long-duration flooding and showed this dramatic shift in species composition and death of red oaks. So it kind of started there. There's a whole bunch of academic folks who have been looking into this, forestry, professor-type folks, researchers, all the way down to the agency folks. We have a whole crew of habitat biologists you may be familiar with who do most of our forest management work, among other things. And they started, just anecdotally noticing this stuff, along with our WMA managers, 20 years ago.
Yeah. So what, as of right now, as far as the rotating the flooding and some of the different changes, what is the Game and Fish doing with these WMAs to try to turn this around?
So the first thing we could do was the thing we had the most control over, which was the date we dropped the boards in the fall. And a lot of those were October 15th. Some of them were October 1st. The closest WMA to where we sit right now at Henry Gray Hurricane Lake was October 1st for years and years and years. We closed the structures. And we have pushed all of those back. So no boards are dropped before November 15th now. And that's not a perfect fix, right? That's just one step.
Yeah.
That was the thing we had the most immediate control over. Now there's whole lots of other issues, and that's what we're doing now is we've gone out and evaluated all these GTRs, found out what the major issues are, which are kind of similar among most of them, some differences, but now it's, okay, let's dive into this thing and how can we fix the infrastructure to actually manage these things as GTRs that don't damage the forest in the long run. So that's kind of the 5, 10, 15 year out now, is to fix all the stuff so we can be much more adaptive and do proper management in the long run.
Yeah. One of the big things that I've heard from a lot of other hunters, the frustrations that the hunters have had with some of our WMAs, is they say, we've controlled the time that we're flooding. We're trying to rotate it, keep it drier. And then I hear a lot of frustration from other hunters about, hey man, it's, I'm out here in the spring and summer and we've still got a lot of water standing here. What are we doing? A lot of people frustrated about that. And not to put words in your mouth, but I believe that's what you guys are here to talk about today. Some of the strategy that you're going to use as far as getting this water actually to come off, and partnering with Ducks Unlimited. So tell me about that. What's the fix here? I'm excited to hear about this.
Yeah, well, I'll get to Tim just a second. It's kind of fascinating, and it's a good thing. I have to laugh a little bit, because when we started this whole education campaign of really bringing this issue up, and we finally got to the point, put it real bluntly, like, all the way up our chain of command in our agency is behind us now. And it took a bunch of years of kind of bringing this issue up for everybody up the chain of command to understand, like, we have to all get on the same page on this. And we are now. It's interesting, when we changed that board update in the fall, I count on one hand the number of people who contacted us about spring flooding before we did that.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden it's, well wait a minute. Wait a minute. What about the spring? That's the biggest problem. And it's awesome. People are paying attention now. Uh-huh. But that was there before we made that decision, and it's there now, right? Yeah. But there's a lot longer track to fix those spring flooding issues, which is what we're working with DU on, and to bring money and engineering to the table, because these aren't simple fixes at all. We've got some places. It's easy to keep going back to Henry Gary Hurricane Lake over and over again during this conversation, because it's kind of our poster child for what can go wrong. And it's right next to a major river. There's plenty of farmers along the White River who understand the issues we're dealing with. Long duration spring and summer flooding. I could go to my boss who used to work out of the Brinkley office for a long time, and I'll get the numbers not quite right, but it's over the last 5 years, let's say, there's been multiple year periods where that area has gone dry, maybe 1, 2, 3 months. And so we're talking a 5-year span here where we've had a lot fewer months dry than we've had wet. Like it's almost been permanently flooded. And that's really doesn't have any, that's with all our structures open. And so that's just because of these major spring rains we're getting, the way the water is released through that system. So there's a lot of parts to try to work on this, but a lot of what we've done through these reviews in most all these places is you can go to these GTRs and see that for 50 years, most of our managers, and this is not at all a criticism on them, they were doing what they were guided to do at the time, was that if they saw water flowing out somewhere, they stopped it somehow, because some duck hunter would call, they didn't want to deal, it was just, hey, if that slough's got water pouring out, we better go plug that thing. Yeah. And so now
we're losing some duck hunting.
We're losing some duck hunting water, right? And somebody calls up and say, man, I can fix that with a backhoe in an hour, right? And then all of a sudden you've got, I don't know what Black River has, 80 ditch plugs and 50 water control structures, similar at Hurricane. I mean, so you've got now like all these places where we stop water from flowing, and going to all these GTRs in this review, it's real clear moving forward. Like, it's easy to hold water back. That's really not that complicated, but we've got to figure out designs that move it all through the system.
Yeah. Getting it out's harder than holding it.
Way harder. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where we got a lot of ideas in our brain. But we've kind of then reached out to Tim and his folks to say, hey, all right, how do we get things designed here that are going to hold up for the next 50 years and move the water we need to move?
Yeah, yeah. So Tim, what strategies do you have in place right now?
Yeah, so as Luke said, 16 of these GTR WMAs across the state that have these GTRs on them. And going back a few years ago, Luke and the team and some of our engineers have been involved in going through each of these. And I don't know that we've been through all of them yet, but we've been through the first wave of them, so to speak. And going in, once kind of have an idea of what you think you want to do, then our engineering guys can come in there and survey it. Get all the detail elevations from the sloughs, the levees, existing structures, things like that. And then some of it dealing like with what Luke was saying, all the hydrology and the river stuff, that's a little bit out of our league. So we've even went outside of DU and gotten some help from some consulting engineers to do some hydrological modeling, how much water is going through this system at X stage, a Black River or White River, and overlaying all of that with the survey data to kind of get a better picture of what's going on inside these areas. And then going back with AGFC looking at this and saying, okay, here's what we think's going on. What's the best plan of attack here? There's a couple different options. So what's the best option? What do y'all want to do? And then once that decision's made, then we'll look at, okay, well, how's that going to be designed? What's that going to cost? And then we'll work together to go after the funding through various different private and public sources to get that funding, then oversee the construction. So each one of these will be a year, 2-year, multi-year process from beginning to end because of the complexity with the survey design, the complexity with the construction, just being able to work. Like he said, the last few years at Hurricane, you might have a week that you could get in there and work at a given time, and so that's another challenge. And so, but to start, I guess, is that survey component that we can help give them a clearer picture of what's going on, so that they can make the decision of what exactly it is that they want, and then we can help them deliver that.
Okay, so you're going to give them the overlay of what you're seeing, giving them that data from what you're seeing, and then but the ultimate decision on moving forward will be with Game and Fish. Is that?
That's right. We're just trying to give them from an engineering and modeling standpoint, give them the clearest picture we can give them of what's going on in that system, and then they look at that and say, okay, well, based on what we know now and what's here, there's a couple of options, and here's what we would like to do, and then we try to design that and make that happen.
Okay. So, and you said funding coming from several different sources. Will some of this be coming straight from Ducks Unlimited? And,
yes. So Arkansas Game and Fish, their foundation and their agencies putting money in this. Ducks Unlimited, through our fundraising efforts, are bringing money to this, and then leverage is a big deal because there's DU, Arkansas Game and Fish. Neither one of us has enough money to go do this. We're talking about $50, $60, $70, $80 million, but we don't know until we get it designed, but a lot of money. And so we can get some seed money, and then we leverage that. There's programs like the North American Wetland Conservation Act. Everyone in our world calls it NAWCA. It's through the Fish and Wildlife Service. It's a federal grant process. Twice a year, they'll accept applications. And you have to bring match to secure that up to $1 million plus of funding. And so that's what we work together with AGSC, with their foundation, with our volunteers and donors to try to raise some of that money to go after and leverage these bigger pots of federal money and combine all of that to get what we need to put that on the ground.
What about cooperation with what you're doing? Cooperation with like the Natural Resources Commission, and then you have like the Corps of Engineers. How will all that coordinate together with what you're doing?
Yes.
It's
complex.
It's
complex.
It's a simple question, man.
Yeah, right.
How do you get the Corps of Engineers, to do exactly
complex.
what you want them to do?
Yeah, they'd say the same thing about us, probably.
Sure.
So, but we, we got friends over there. We've got a lady in our office, Jen Sheehan. She's that's her job is to worry about that stuff. And she does a good job of it, and so kind of the short term is the Corps actually all these activities. We have to get permits just like a private individual would. You could maybe even argue more so because we're in the public eye, and we got to check all the boxes and do everything right. And so we're actually, I think folks met out there yesterday to talk about the 404 permit for work at Hurricane. They met out there with the Corps folks who are reviewing our permit. So we're going through the same process a private individual would go through. But and long term, I think our goal is to try to keep working cooperatively with the Corps. We're very interested in them opening up provided an opportunity to evaluate the water management plans they have. There's those 4 or 5 lakes. This is not a simple, like, their decisions that influence the White River flows are. We're not going to pretend that their decisions are easy either. They got a lot going on.
Sure.
And so, but we're definitely trying to elevate that conversation to where we can hopefully get a sit down with the Corps and say, okay, us private landowners, farmers, lots of people are interested in working on what's going on with flooding in the White River Basin and the Black River for Black River WMA, right? It all ties into the lower Arkansas and the Mississippi, right? It's all connected. And so we're starting those conversations. We're trying to get that going. Those plans that they operate under are authorized by Congress. So to change that requires approval of Congress. So it's this long, complicated deal. We had a tour just a couple days ago out there with Congressman Westerman and Congressman Hill, actually at Hurricane, to show them exactly what we're talking about here and our needs. So, yeah, we work with USGS, the U.S. Geological Survey, which a lot of people may not know what that agency is, but most duck hunters do know who they are. They just may not be aware. Like every river gauge the duck hunters check on the Cache River during duck season, those are all managed by USGS.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, rivergauges.com. Those data, those are USGS gauges. And Game and Fish actually has cooperative agreements to pay for those many of those gauges, not all of them. But we have now, if you go back a couple of years and look, there's actually some gauges that only have data back to 2018 on Glaze Creek, for example, at Hurricane. And those, we partnered with USGS to get those gauges in there to do the hydrologic and hydraulic modeling like Tim was talking about, to know exactly what's coming through those systems. So they're a huge partner. They've got a lot of expertise in dealing with water data. And so they're helping us as well. So we're not scared to work with anybody who can help out with this stuff. So it's a team effort.
It looks like it's got a big team, a lot of moving parts in doing something like this. And I'm sure we're just scratching the surface here in this conversation of what all goes into this.
And just to follow up, Luke brought up a good point about the recent meeting at Hurricane, talked about, legislative appropriation of fundings and authorization. Our policy, do you have some policy folks, and they're helping in the background too with all of this stuff. So it's it's fundraising, it's policy, it's engineering, it's biological expertise, it's all of that. So it's a big deal. And for our region, for the southern region, my office out of Jackson, Mississippi, we have 13 states or so out of that, and this project right here, this initiative over the next decade plus, is by far the biggest project we have going on right now in our region. It's significant.
Yeah, this is huge. In trying to prepare for you guys coming in, I asked a few friends of mine some different questions, just gave them the general of what you guys were planning to do, and saying, hey, what questions would you pass on to these guys, just trying to get a feel for it. So I've got a handful of questions here, and I was sitting here looking over this before you came in, and I want everybody to understand these are not when I read it to myself, everything I'd written down, I thought, boy, this sounds contentious, man. This sounds like some angry folks here, and I'm sure you're used to getting a lot of that.
That's what we do.
That's par for the course. But no, with the guy, it was not intended this way. I don't want it to come off that way. But like one of the questions that I got, and I'll let you guys decide who answers this, was talking about the biometa drainage system that was implemented earlier. That was, to my knowledge, had not come off. Or they did not feel like it was doing exactly what they wanted to do at this point. So what's the status of that? Or
they're right.
They're right. Okay.
Yeah, they're right, and we completely agree with them.
Okay.
But I would add that it's not done.
Okay. Still a work in progress.
That's the limiting factor, is that it's not done.
Yeah.
So what happens? We're not going to go into all the details. Somebody can get online and look all this stuff up for hours if they want to.
Right.
But that's one of these congressionally authorized core projects. But authorized doesn't mean funded. And so this thing was the biometa irrigation project. That thing was authorized 25 years ago, maybe, give or take. But if you then kind of just dribble out funding to it, nothing really ever happens. You can have all the plans in the world, but until Congress also provides the funding for it, you're stuck.
Yeah, you're stuck.
And then there's state match required for that. And the same individual who works with the Corps for us is also our primary point of contact for that project now for our agency. So we just had a conference call a couple weeks ago with the Corps and some consultants we have working on this. Mickey Heitmeyer, well-known bottom and hardwood forest ecologist, and Tom Foti, who's a forest kind of ecosystem expert, who's an Arkansas-based guy. They're helping us out with that. And we had the Corps individuals in charge of this project on the call with us. And so we're trying to move that next step along. The Corps is working on the engineering. Probably what most people see there, and they're right, is the drain of Biomeda out to the Arkansas River. It's depends on who you ask. You're talking 8-9 miles or whatever of Little Biomeda. Basically, none of that is on game and fish property. It's all on private property.
On private land, okay.
And it is the bottom, that tiny straw at the bottom of the whole Biomeda basin, and including the WMA. And that's not on our land. We don't do eminent domain. We don't take over people's ground.
You can't just go in there and make the straw bigger then.
Yeah, we just can't go do it.
Yeah.
And it's part of this Corps project, and the Corps doesn't have the funding to actually go implement that part of the project. But they're within a few months, they tell us, of having their conceptual designs. They are planning that clean out right now. They're finalizing the engineering stuff that Tim talked about with DU doing. The Corps is doing that now, designing that lower Biomeda clean out to get the water to the floodgates and the pump there at Little Biomeda where it hits the Arkansas River levee. Now, I want to be clear that even when that's fixed, that's not going to be the be all and end all. We won't be done when that happens, because that own system itself will have its own limitations. Everything. There's so many factors that have been changed, right? The whole landscape has changed, and we can't expect to go in and make one change and then it'll fix everything else. It's a stepwise process. But yeah, we hear that a lot, and we're right on board with folks, and we are pushing every chance we get, and the Corps is there with us on this. If you want to see that happen, we don't lobby at Game and Fish, but I'll just say that is a congressional decision to fund that project. So the waterfowl biologist at Game and Fish does not make the decision on whether that gets funded or not.
Yeah,
I think people can figure out who does.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So with what you're doing now, you're going to keep working on that project. So is a lot of the other things that you're doing here with this partnership with Ducks Unlimited, will some of that be like factored in? You're looking in this Biomeda. Is that one of the things that you're looking at? And so maybe moving forward with that, and then some other aspects, which you're saying that wouldn't fix it all together anyway. So you're looking at, I guess, more of a bigger composition of things that would have to go in there to meet the goal of draining Biomeda.
Yep. It'll be the same concept. What we'll do is, when this, it's kind of it's kind of like one part launches forward while the other one kind of hangs back. And that part it's kind of a kind of hop and skip type thing. It's not a clean linear process, unfortunately.
Right.
But yeah, as the Corps project moves along, we're hoping to get kind of some engineering, some survey funding through our agency here next year to help complement fundraising work that DU's doing to get survey work done out there sooner than later, and also do the hydraulic modeling that needs to happen on Biomeda, because all of those structures inside the WMA probably won't be directly tied to Corps funding. That's probably something that Game and Fish, in cooperation with DU and any other partner that wants to come on board, we'll really have to take that on ourselves, most likely. And we're talking $15 million plus to fix the internal plumbing of Biomeda, and then you've got the that's going to send all that water to that tiny straw we're talking about. So that needs to be fixed, right? So it's in general on these things, our wetland biologist would say this year. I'm the guy who does a bunch of talking, and Tim too. We talk to people, and we do the radio and TV shows and stuff, and DU's engineer and our wetland biologist, Jason Jackson, and Matt Willoughby, the engineer, they're the ones that actually do the work. We just talk about it to people. But
that's the best job.
Yeah, it's so that stuff is still, there's still a lot to do on the inside of it. But we really, our wetlands guys, always talking about bottom up, fix the bottom of the drain first, and then start working your way up. So it's got a place to go.
Yeah. One of the other questions that I got was talking about the beaver dams. How much trouble, beaver dams can either be a duck hunter's best friend or his worst nightmare, depending on what he's trying to accomplish. But anything in these plans going to address the beavers? I don't know if you would control the population or clearing the dams or all of the above. Anything like that going to be worked in?
Yeah, well, I mean, with anytime you have water, you're going to have beaver, especially in these river systems. And so I think, beaver management will continue to be a part of that management strategy. But in a lot of these areas, and Luke can speak to this, like, Dave Donaldson, Hurricane, all of them, they have multiple interior levees and multiple structures, like he said, 50 or 60 structures at Dave Donaldson. And so part of the design will be looking at how can we change some of that? How can we, instead of having, 50 or so structures, maybe we can have, 10 or 5 or whatever, big weir type structures, and change some of that drainage so that, there's, instead of having all these small choke points, you have larger areas where you can get the water off and the flow much faster. And so maybe that in itself will make it easier to manage and do away with some of the beaver issues. But at the end of the day, beaver management is still going to be a part of that. And
yeah, I'll add to that, Brad, that we've it's about $500,000 to $750,000 a year that our agency spends on contract beaver control and drainage. So that we have contracts with 3 different individuals, companies now, that are tasked with beaver control and drainage maintenance, if you will, across all of these GTRs. Mm-hmm. So those folks are out there. They're trapping beavers, but they're also, if they see a problem with an existing drain, a plug structure, part of their job is to communicate that with us and also take care of it. And so we actually monitor all their activities through a web-based database. We can kind of do a almost daily report on they'll put symbols in for active dams, destroyed dams, trapped beavers, plugs that need to be taken care of, plugs that have been removed. We're monitoring this on a daily basis. And if anybody sees a beaver dam out there, give us a call. I mean, let us know, and that's something that we can work with those contractors to take care of it. It's a never-ending problem, but Tim's exactly right. Our design in the future is going to hopefully continue to reduce those issues.
Yeah. I need to find out where to apply for a job. I'd love to have a business card that said Beaver Management Specialist or something like that with my name on it.
It's a niche market.
Niche market. Yeah, absolutely. Another question that I had gotten was about food plots within these WMAs and in some of the surrounding rest areas and things like that. Is that working into any of the plans for what we're doing here? I know you're mainly looking at draining the water and working with the timber right now, but is that anything that you're happening to looking at right now?
I guess
Brookings.
Yeah, Brookings. Like we're right now, currently, we're working on a project there. It's 200 acres, give or take, moist soil area there, just adjacent to the Green Tree area and the river. And so we have funding through NACA there in partnership with Arkansas Game and Fish, and going in there and redoing some of that infrastructure, making it easier to get the water, across the whole 200 acres. With some levee design, some new, in I guess that would be the further, is that north or east end, that Stacy Tract or whatever.
Yeah.
Putting the ability to get water there through underground piping and riser, and some levee work. And then the big part of that project is a pump in the river there that's going to relift water from the river and get a lot more flow and a lot more, make it a lot more efficient to flood that area. The way it's been flooded now, Luke, is as my understanding is it's an old in-ground PTO-driven pump that's been there forever, and it's about run its course, and so it's not efficient. And so this will be a much better way to get it flooded and improve the ability for those managers up there to manage for moist soil, or if they want to plant different crops in there, rotate that. However, so that this project will address that. It's a little bit separate from our GTR work, but it's still in that same WMA.
Right. So it's continuing. So it's our wetlands guy again. He's got one technician who works for him, but all of this is going on at the same time. We've got about an 8,000 acre duck farm spread across the state of all these non-forested lands that we manage typically for as moist soil habitat, which is produce natural plants, native plants, that produce a pile of seed for wintering ducks. And projects like the Berkings project, we can, with good irrigation, which that'll be able to do, summer irrigations. I mean, now we get wet summers like this, it may not matter as much, but we'll have a dry summer again sometime, and that kind of irrigation capacity can drastically increase the food on the ground in all those areas. And I think it's interesting with our wetland management stuff, and we talk about moist soil management a lot, because it's the most efficient way to produce a wide variety of resources and a large quantity of resources for waterfowl across this whole across a large scale. And but part of that, we get a lot of questions about, hey, why don't you plant something in that? Why don't you plant something in that? And well, if you can produce a couple thousand pounds per acre without having to plant anything, and it's a better, more diverse diet for ducks that they're going to eat all winter, not just for a week or two when it gets super cold, like they do corn, let's say. That's a potato chip for them. That's just something they can snack on when it gets really cold, and they need a lot of quick energy. And that has its place, but it's not kind of like we manage for 110 day wintering period. We don't manage just for 60 days duck season. And so spreading all that out, we try to provide this diverse habitat on all these areas. But what goes unnoticed a lot is that through our management rotation on those moist soil areas, we're planting millet on close to a third of those acres every year, just as part of our management rotation. So it's like, there's a pile of land out there that's planted in millet every year on those areas where we can do it. Within these forested wetlands, the goal is sustainable, healthy forests in the long term, right? I mean, there's some deer food plots that get flooded up every now and then, but as far as duck stuff goes, we just want a good functional forest out there.
And you're looking at more with your food plots. Don't let me put words in your mouth, but like what I'm hearing is like a little bit different than a guy that's got a duck club out here that's just focused, like you said, on that 60 days.
Yeah.
What he's planting. You guys are looking at a little bit of a longer timeline. And
it is, and that guy's not wrong. I mean, I'm not going to go tell him he's doing the wrong thing. It's just that when we look at a landscape, if you back out to 30,000 feet, and we've got this very small footprint of public land, and you just look at an aerial photo, right? There's a bunch of forests, and we got a ton of forested wetlands, which is awesome between us and the National Wildlife Refuges. A lot of states don't have that, and it's phenomenal. We've got that stuff, but you look at the map, and it's like, do we really need ag on public lands? Like the whole Delta is ag, right? I mean, do we need more agricultural crops on the postage stamp of public lands we have in Arkansas?
Yeah.
Like, no, we probably need to provide the diverse resources that other people may not be able to provide. I mean, we're not going to go out and ask 1.2 million acres of rice out there. Yeah, go grow moist soil plants for us for the ducks. I mean, that doesn't make any sense, right? Yeah. So, we're trying to find where the biggest resource need is that we can provide. And fantastic if some private duck club guy is providing something different. And we could have a whole nother session to talk about agricultural field management and what that means on the landscape for ducks these days. But yeah, we're trying to fill a gap here, not and think about all sorts of different critters, 12 months out of the year, and then for that 100 days plus that we call the wintering period for waterfowl.
Mm-hmm. All critters matter.
All of them do.
I didn't believe that until recently, but I guess that is true.
Hey, you go through these moist soil units, you talk about turkey nesting and deer bedding.
Yeah.
They love them.
Yeah.
They love them.
Yeah. All right. One more question that I got from some of my friends are asking about, just what about the trees? such a problem for duck hunters. You have trees going across your boat trails, things like that. Is that going to be something that you're going to be working on as well?
The long-term vision is to have less trees that are dying, and then to help,
which would help with the problem.
Help with the problem, right? When you go out to places, it's tough. You get these trees that are just constantly go take a look at Hurricane like we did a couple of days ago. I mean, it's depressing. There's pushing 1,000 acres of trees that are just, we're talking 40-inch nut all oak that are standing there dead.
Really?
Done.
That's heartbreaking.
It'll crush you to go out there and look around.
Yeah.
But nobody goes out there this time of year, right?
Yeah.
Why would anybody go out in the mosquitoes and the mud and the muck to go look at it? But that's when we're out here doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
So, I'd encourage people to go take a look at these places outside duck season to really, when leaves are on, to really get a feel what's going on out there. Because when you get there in the winter and all the leaves are off, it kind of all can look the same. Mm-hmm. But I think people who hunt Hurricane are going to go out there and see some massive amount of dead trees. This has happened in the last 3 years. Like, trees have leafed out completely. Like, they green up in the spring. Again, a 40-inch, who knows how tall, nut all oak, 100-year-old tree, fully leafed out with green leaves. Then boom, done. August, all the leaves turn brown. The tree dies. It's over with. That quick. It's done. And it's not coming back. And there's hundreds of acres of that out at Hurricane right now. Wow. And we've got it. Biometa functions a little differently. Back to the fallen trees thing. They get a lot more wind throw of willow oaks, for example. So when the tree just blows over, saturated soils, not very strong root systems.
Yeah.
Right. And the tree's stressed. And then, a couple weeks ago, an 80-mile-an-hour, these hurricanes blow through in the winter, or in the summer, when it's wet. Mm-hmm. And they just fall over. So it's kind of a never-ending battle. Typically our folks will, we'll work with people when it comes to figuring out where those primary areas are. But I think I'd encourage people to look at it from our perspective as well. Everybody's got their own boat lane, right? That they want.
Yeah.
They've all. It's not like there's just one or two of these things that are. Yep. Okay. This is like the highway department. Okay. This is Highway 67.
This is the freeway here. Yeah.
We need to fix this, right?
Yeah.
So, if you got this guy saying, well, hey, this is the most important boat lane on the area, then tomorrow you get a call from a guy, hey, no, this is the most important boat lane on the area. Fix this one, fix that one. So some of our drainage work, the stuff we done at Hurricane, actually a different funding source, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation that DU got for us. We did some mulching. I don't know if you've gone out on some of these areas and seen where some of these major drains have actually been kind of turned from choked up mess to wide open almost overnight. We're using this tool called mulching heads on tracos, amphibious tracos, to get in there and do this. And that's we're not doing that to improve boat lanes, but it
is.
It sure does that.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. We've probably heard more negative comments than positive about that.
Really?
Yeah. Don't open up that boat lane. Now everybody can get here. So
yeah.
So it's like one person's going to want the boat lane cleared. The next guy will say, you clear that thing out, and everybody's going to follow me.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
Yeah. Well, we're duck hunters. We're not going to be happy about.
Oh no, not at all. I'm a duck hunter too. We got 3 different opinions sitting right here. So
yeah, absolutely. And only mine's right.
Exactly.
All right. Well, here in just a second, I want to last question just throw out there, and then I want to talk to Tim about some of the other things that Ducks Unlimited has coming up here for the future. But me as a hunter, just your average Joe citizen who loves to hunt, what can I do? What to help this process? I recognize that, hey, we're losing a valuable resource here. We're losing something that, I want my grandchildren to be able to enjoy duck hunting the same way that I did growing up. I want them to at least have that opportunity. If we can get them off the Nintendo, I want to get them out there. So what can I do to help you guys? What can we do to support you?
It's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. That's really important to ask. And, I think some of the funding we've talked about is kind of, maybe it's unfamiliar to a lot of folks, but it actually means a lot. The constituent support, constituents contacting their representatives and saying, we value the North American Wetlands Conservation Act. We value, looking at core waterway management plans. Like, that stuff's important to us. We're one agency who doesn't lobby. DU's got great policy people who are helping out a lot with this stuff, but contacts from actual duck hunters in these areas mean a lot more than one call from Game and Fish, frankly. I mean, that's not to say we don't have a good working relationship with folks, but I mean, that kind of feedback and help is really valuable. And I think people don't realize that they can be a big advocate for us by doing that, supporting these funding programs that allow us to keep working.
Just contact your representatives.
Yeah, let them know, hey, wow, so you're going to get, at the end of the day, I don't know, we'll have $4 or $5 million of this North American Wetlands Conservation Act going right here at Hurricane in the ground, paying a contractor to do something, to move dirt and put in concrete. So that's super important. And then I'll let Tim speak to, DU has got, strong fundraising capacity. I think stay tuned from Game and Fish and our Arkansas Game and Fish Foundation. Be on the lookout for information from us about how you can get involved with on the financial donation side of things. Stay tuned for that in the next year or so, I would say. Okay. And then now, with what Tim's doing and his folks in DU.
I would just add on to that, like Luke said, just get engaged, get involved. I mean, from your state to, your federal representatives, let them know, what's going on and how it's important to you as a hunter, as someone that works in the duck hunting industry, generally, interested in what's going on in your area, and buy a hunting license, buy a duck stamp, get involved with, DU or turkeys or whatever organization you want, and, just bring positive energy, help, raise funds and just, be engaged and support the effort, I guess.
And I hope everyone, all the hunters out here support organizations like DU, Delta Waterfowl, all these other organizations. We need to understand that COVID has hit the fundraising very hard. We're not having these banquets, or
That's right.
A lot of times we've been limited on that, and it's been I'm sure a big challenge for you guys doing some fundraising. So we need to. Don't forget these organizations, remember them and support them. I know you still have some virtual events, maybe things like that they can look into.
That's a great point. Yeah, it has. I mean, it's really, with all these quarantines and limitations in place, it's really not, DU, Delta, Turkey, everyone. It's just pretty much shut down their fundraising, from going back from February, March through even now. And you're starting to see a few events come back online a little bit, but yeah, we did a good job. Our fundraising folks, volunteers putting on these virtual events to keep money coming in to fund projects like this, and hopefully we can get through this and kind of get back to normal, whatever that's going to be. But yeah, funding is huge, and any way you can support through an online event, or go online and look up Ducks Unlimited in your state, or the Arkansas Game and Fish Foundation, and just whatever organization you want to give to right now. Especially here in Arkansas, that's going to support this work would just be huge.
Yeah, and we have to remember as hunters, sometimes we talk about how much we love hunting, what we want to do, what we expect to be done, but when it comes to contributing financially, sometimes we have to put your money where your mouth is. And my problem has always been I got a big mouth and very little money, but every little bit helps.
You're right.
And so be active and look, like I said, Game and Fish Foundation, Ducks Unlimited, all these other organizations out there. Let's step up and try to support them. Especially this year during such a difficult time.
And,
so
as I mentioned earlier, leveraging. You may not sound like a lot, but if a lot of people give, and you get a few $1,000s saved up or put together, then you can take that and go leverage it and get more money. And so we could take $100,000 from several folks throughout the state and leverage that and go get $1 million.
There you go.
So it's just building on, and every little bit helps.
Sure.
I guess the last thing I'll say on that, Brad, is bear with us.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to get this perfect the first time, and we want the best for ducks and duck hunters in the long term. We are public land duck hunters. Like that, I want people to understand that
sure.
The people guiding these things, including me and our wetland biologists, for example, we are public land duck hunters. and bear with us. Like it's going to take some time. There's going to be some perceived costs for doing some of this, like downtime or whatever it may look like. But we're looking for the long-term sustainability, you know, that next generation being able to experience this and the generations after that. So just be patient with us, keep talking to us, give us feedback, but just bear with us. We're trying to do the right thing in the long run.
Sure. And a lot of as we've touched on here, a lot of moving parts, a lot of different organizations involved. It's never as simple as what it looks like on the outside.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Once you get into one of these things and get going, you know, you may have to shift courses because of something you didn't perceive. And that's part of it. Just, you know, we're all pulling the rope in the same direction, and we all want the same thing. And, you know, just as Luke said, just bear with us and give, you know, support where you can.
You bet. So Tim, tell us about Ducks Unlimited. What's some other projects that you've got going on, something for the future? What are we looking at?
Yeah, so we spent most of this, you know, talking about you know, our work on public lands, primarily with Arkansas Game and Fish. We do have some projects going on with the Fish and Wildlife Service over at White River Refuge on some of their hunt areas. But you know, regarding private lands and some other things that we have going, we have our rice stewardship program that's been ongoing here for several years. That's a program where we partner with USA Rice, and it's essentially working with rice farmers to help them get signed up for programs through the USDA or NRCS to help rice farming, you know, be more sustainable. As Luke said, we have over 1 million plus acres of rice here, and that provides a lot of waterfowl habitat during these winter months, and it's important that stays on the landscape. And so these different programs, farmers can sign up, and it's basically giving them a per acre payment to do like water efficiency type things, to you know, put flow meters or furrow irrigation or you know, technology where you're flooding your rice, and at the end of when it's done, instead of it running out in the ditch and the farmer didn't catch it for a day or two later, there's a little gauge there that shuts off, tells the farmer when to go shut the well off and save water. You know, water conservation, making it cheaper for rice farmers to grow the rice and to keep that on the landscape. And so that's a big program. We've got over 200,000 acres or so in Arkansas signed up in that right now. And that's a real strong program for us. And then we also have our conservation easement program, where it works with landowners that have properties, primarily, you know, wetland, forested type properties that they want to keep protected in perpetuity. They don't want folks down the road to buy it and clear cut it and develop it. And so there's conservation easement is a tool that allows landowners to sort of set that up and protect their property going forward. And there's tax incentives for that. And so those are sort of the main things we do here, I guess, throughout the Mississippi Alluvial Valley, and particularly here in Arkansas, is our easements, our rice program, and then a lot of our work with our public partners.
Yeah. So if any of the landowners out there, the farmers, wanted to learn more about these programs, who would they need to contact? They
could contact me, and I could forward that along. We've got some rice stewardship folks here in Arkansas, and we could make sure we got that to the right person. Hook them up with that.
Okay, good deal. Well, gentlemen, listen, I really appreciate you guys coming on. It's been very educational for me, and I'm really excited to see the partnership between Ducks Unlimited and Arkansas Game and Fish. You know, working to, you know, work on the GTRs and work on the health of these these WMAs that just. It's just central to the identity that we have here in this state, you know, to see a partnership like this going on, and look forward to seeing how all this works out. And hopefully we come back in the future and we can hear some success stories of how this worked and how we're turning around the health of the trees and how all this is coming together. So really appreciate you guys taking the time to be with me.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
You bet.